Okay, so we're listening to the JCEC net, and I'm hoping that sound of the radio will be isolated, and that so I can. JCEC is Josephine County Emergency Coordinators Net. It's done through a series of repeaters that are in the Josephine County area, and I happen to have the map of that as my screensaver here. So what we're looking at is King Mountain, which is the tallest one and the furthest north, and is used for a lot of the linkage, the 440 sublinks from repeater to repeater. To the southeast of it is Elk, and then there's Gilbert and Fielder right above Grants Pass to the north, Bluey to the southeast, Onion, a fairly tall mountain to the west of Grants Pass, and then down in the Cave Junction area, directly north of Cave Junction, between here and Selma, right off of the Highway 199, is $8 Mountain, which has a unique name, $8 Mountain, because a man can make $8 a day on $8 Mountain. Back when there were no supply trains here, and $8 wouldn't buy you flour because there was none here. Then Fiddler, another kind of remote part of the coastal range, and a beautiful place to have a repeater at times. That allows a connection from out on the coast of Oregon. And this is all tied into the beautiful Camp 6 repeater above Hyuchi um, on French Hill, and that connects then into the Crescent City system, which connects north to Brookings, and then there's a repeater in the Klamath area and repeaters in Humboldt County somewhere. I'm not even certain where those are. So we have people talking from, oh gosh, trying to think of how far north. Further north than Wolf Creek on the I-5, and then down to close to Medford on the south end of I-5, and then down the 199 corridor and to 101 on down to Eureka, California. That's a very extensive net. At one point, before I knew about the Eureka connection, the Klamath connection, I knew that it was over 10,000 square miles, and my guess would be 15,000 or even better now. Now that I know more about the system and realize that the person that wrote that first figure was before the linkage into the Camp 6 area even. So it's quite an extensive network, and some very knowledgeable people operate it. So I'm not a member of JCEC. I am a member of SOARC, the Southern Oregon Amateur Radio Club, which is the manager of most of these systems, not all of them. And we have a club repeater, the SOARC repeater at 147,300. That's a positive offset on 136.5 tone if you're a visitor. Tell them WS7 PB sent you. Can't remember my own number sometimes. And so the JCEC, so SARC, are at 8 o'clock on, or 7:30 on Monday night, we have the SOARC membership roll call. And I am a SOARC member, so I'm on the roll call. JCEC, I'm a consistent guest, so I will get called after the membership has been called. And I should start paying attention for that. Debbie is calling the net tonight, not Joe. Joe Sudoka is the Josephine County Emergency Coordinator, and a very good man. And Steve Porter is the president of SOARC. He had a commercial communications company for decades and owned some of the tops of the mountains, and so some space is rented, that's usually with JCEC, and some is donated by Steve, and there's no real separation of JCEC and SOARC in those situations. The Del Norte Amateur Radio Club operates Camp 6, which is the repeater I will go through, which is approximately 30 miles away from my location in Cave Junction, Oregon. And Don Olson is the president of that club, a gentleman I grew up with. His father was a close friend of my parents and my aunt, and as was his wife. And so Don was a duck hunter on Lake Earl back when I was a young kid duck hunting. Okay, so I'm focusing. You kind of got focus on nets. You got to do it. And I already made. So tomorrow night will be the Del Norte Amateur Radio Net check-ins. First the Gasky Net, and then the Club Net. The Gasky Net's an emergency net, and that's where Camp 6 is located, near Gasky. Gasky, being in the mountains, has a fair amount of emergencies, the fires in particular. It's a staging area. It has a small airport, but an important airport. And so that's my backyard, my hometown is Crescent City, California. And then Cave Junction is 60 miles inland, just across the Oregon border on the 199, the Redwood Highway. Contrary, the old Redwood Highway. Now 101 captures that. But 199 has a spectacular drive through the Redwoods just north of Crescent City. And really, if you have just a minute in the once in a lifetime to see the Redwoods, you could do a lot worse than the drive from Crescent City to Hyuchi. And of course, then the Smith River, the highway follows that. And it is an absolutely pristine river. Its clarity is unrivaled in rivers. Okay. I do have to say the SOARC members in general have better radio communications than the JCEC. They're a search and rescue group, and their focus isn't as much on radio, although of course they rely on it heavily. But you know, they're kind of a Baofeng sort of organization, and in particular because they can operate on the non-ham frequencies with those radios opened, which makes it very convenient for search and rescue. This is a case where the regulations show their antiquity and just the general silliness of most regulations. There's no reason why we can't have radios that cover MERS, FRS, GMRS, CB, and the ham bands and whatever P25 or whatever all else is out there. But we don't. So I'm operating tonight on my ICOM 7100. I'm using my small dipole. I have a bigger array, a 2-meter array, but I'm using it for a test of this little Kenwood that I picked up for $10 at a swap meet on Saturday. A test that didn't show that it isn't the radio that can't hit repeaters. It's working beautifully on simplex. Steve at SOARC said he might do a tune on this that would help that. Okay, so they're coming up. They'll probably call me here. Maybe not the first one of the guest members. So the protocol here is to answer your... So that she's calling late or miss JCEC members. They're very specific about that because I used to have a habit of butting in right there when I don't really belong there. That last call was $8 Mountain, 4 miles. I can see the antennas right there when I look over my shoulder out the window. When I look out the window, I can see. But that's not where I like to hit. I like to go a little further. Camp 6 in particular. Although I also use Fiddler once in a while if I haven't heard anybody else use it, just to show the link is working. But I didn't listen tonight. I talked to you. Or really to myself if nobody else ever sees this. So we will. That was Steve Porter, president of SOARC, making his announcements. We had a nice, successful swap meet last Saturday, day before yesterday, Saturday, May 14th, 2022. So he's talking about that right now. That's where I got the little radio I just showed you. And I'm actually going to grab a couple more of those. KG7, KGN. They didn't respond. Oh, they did. Uh-oh, what did I... Shit. What the hell? I just missed, and I don't know what the hell. No, I bet I just missed my call. Shoot. All right. Buttons. How do I look in a panic? I'll get to see soon, huh? I know I missed mine. I usually come up. We'll see. No, I should have tried my new handheld outside to $8. That could have been done. Now I got to pay attention for when they call for any guest. Excuse me. This is WS7PB, no traffic through Camp 6 tonight. So she caught me. She said, "Thank you, Rick," through Camp 6. The Camp 6, since nobody else had hit it for a little while, sent out its identification Morse code, which is a standard repeater thing. New repeater users at times are confused by that kind of noise. And in particular, this system having so many repeaters in it, it will trigger multiple ones at times, and this was kind of a long dead space here, and that can be frustrating. The understanding about linked repeaters, while a fairly basic part of ham radio, there's so many new users that many people, you're focused on the multiple subjects of the test, and you can't learn anything in detail, even some things that are fairly basic. So repeaters, if you're new to ham radio and you're using the FM, handy talkies, this is actually a GMRS, but it's identical to the 2 meters and the 440 meter. Rarely a 220, and a lot of them double band. Any of the other 2 meter ones I've got a couple feet away would be 2 meter and 440. All of those can interact with repeaters. A repeater, you send one frequency, send your voice to it, generally with a tone, and then that repeater is triggered to send out what you're saying on a second frequency. So other people will hear it on the second frequency. Then when you have two repeaters, let's say it's a 2 meter repeater, to get that information over to the next one, that's generally done around 440. These are small antennas, highly directional with high gain, so that they're not splattering out over the whole countryside. It's King Mountain pointed at uh, Camp 6, say, or Onion to Camp 6. It's very directed, and that keeps us from polluting the frequencies. The actual 440 repeater systems that exist here in Oregon are pretty interesting. I listen in on one. I can't really trigger it from where I'm at because 440 doesn't have the range unless you have those good directed antennas, and my 440 antenna is omnidirectional, not really designed to hit that repeater that I can hear. So anyway, the 440 is the backbone of it. And so it can be confusing. As you can tell as I'm going on here and trying to remember what to talk about, there's a lot of parts to it. And I'm really not the guy to give you the best explanation. I'm the guy to tell you that you need to do a little bit of homework and you need to think about what you're hearing. Listening is a huge, huge part of radio. I check in 5 seconds, but I spend 2 hours at this. Listen in, hear other people. What repeaters are they using that sound good? Which ones don't? Who doesn't have good sounding radios? I get complimented on my radio sound a lot, and I'm not using a Baofeng handheld with a rubber duck on it. Well, even you might notice the GMRS antenna. That is not the factory antenna. It's a Nagoyo, a fairly well-known and a good brand. And yeah, so you want to update your equipment. At least I do, and you will get better results if you do also. And so would some of these people. Um, I'm not one to just get on the radio and say, "You could do better. You're crotchy. You're blah blah blah." But I have made a mental note next time I see Joe Sedona to say, "Hey Joe, what kind of antenna are you using?" And because it's not difficult to upgrade what you're doing. I myself have pretty much abandoned quarter wavelength verticals. I do use a 5/8 on my Jeep, but for anything base or field portable, I believe we should be using doublets. Excuse me, dipoles for 2 meters. A dipole has its own built-in counterpoise. It's balanced. Whereas if you use a quarter length, then you see all these ad hoc waves that are more complicated than a dipole's twin elements. Ad hoc things like, four other elements springing out like some porcupine or coils. And uh, my Jeep, to get good results, I built a ground plate, and my Jeep is bonded. And the Jeep's a metal vehicle. If you are putting a quarter wave with nothing for it to bounce against in a modern, let's say a Corvette body, um, you're not going to get any kind of result. So even on a vehicle, you might want to consider somehow using a dipole. But for base stations at people's homes, a dipole with a cable running in, this cable is one that goes out to, what's supposed to be my experimental dipole, but it's actually the one I'm using tonight. It runs out there so that I can plug in these handy talkies. I can plug this into a 2 meter. This is a 440 GMRS 460 band, so I have a small dipole for that. And if I were, and it's duplexed, so if I were to use that cable there, and plug it into here, which I can do with adapters, then this would have an antenna that is 24 feet in the air. And being a dipole is balanced, and we don't have to worry about its counterpoise or ground plane or all. What else do they call? Oh gosh, some people end up with a wire's nest that looks like it's from a horror show. To basically be the second side of a dipole. So there's 2 meter, 440, 460 dipoles out there, and I can hook them up quickly to any of my handhelds, to a radio I'm testing, uh, uh, to my base radio if I had something go out of it. And so that's a useful thing to have, and something that most amateurs probably should try if they're having trouble hitting repeaters. You get yourself a dipole for your 2 meter antenna and get it up about 20, 24, 30. Uh, that the normal base antenna that I use is well over, for 2 meters, is well over 30 feet high. I don't have to have it there. The antenna I use tonight is at about, like I said, 24 feet, 10 or 15 feet less than that one, um, and not fed with as nice a wire. The base one has LMR 400, and I don't even. This is early stages of my ham career. I just bought Amazon cable. Not recommended, but you get on the air and learn. And so there's just some Amazon cable running out there, and it works very well, far better than what I'm hearing from other people. And I want to help you to understand that, and I'll help them too when the chance comes. If you look right here, that's a field antenna I'm creating, and it'll be used for soda work. That's an Aubrey, which looks ridiculous on a handheld, which was what they were marketed for. But once I get that finished, see, I'm figuring out how to run the cable for it through that pipe, and it's on a pack frame that has a Homer box attached to it that I'm using to hold stuff right now. But that's going to be my soda setup, and I want good 2 meter with it. And the Aubrey antenna is a half wave on 2 meters. It's the longest model. They most likely have some kind of 49-to-1 Ballon choke device built into the base of it, and it doesn't have to be very big because I I think the rating for the Aubrey is fairly high, but on the base of it it says 8 watts, and that sounds very reasonable. And none of my handy talkies are 8 watts, but I have an even smaller, way over there, a smaller 2 meter. Uh, I don't even know if I can Basque. It's a Chinese Basque, Basque, probably pronounced Woshan, because the good Lord only knows who has decided how to interpret Chinese into English. So, given that, I want that, and it's 20 watts. This radio's 20 watts. I wouldn't be afraid to use that 8 watt rated Aubrey at 20 watts, but I probably wouldn't. I'd probably watch it at first when I'm using it with those radios. And so, anyway, the antennas are very important. And one thing that nets on all frequencies, low, high, HF, VHF, 440, uh, the Laura, not Laura, Anyway, all network nets have a very important function far beyond just you and your neighbors and your community hearing one another. It is there to test our equipment. Joe Sedota says that very often. Test our equipment, make sure it's functional, and that's also a chance to improve it. It's hard, and it's also a good way to notice if you have problems. This is a wet, rainy place here where I live in southern Oregon, and in the winter, uh, despite winterizing and trying to use good practice of when I put things together, water gets into cables and into antenna fittings and such like that. So practicing on the net, and then sometimes, I mean, you may notice your turn comes and they don't hear you. So you know you have something set wrong, and that can be a lot of different things. Grab that handy talkie, get out in the backyard where I can see $8 Mountain's antenna, and check in as a later mismember. Practice responding when things don't go as you plan them to. And so that's the kind of thing that nets do for us. They give us a regular base of people who we know are listening at a given time. And so we can take our new handy talkie, we can try out our new antenna or a reorientation or a change of elevation or a different cable or maybe this microphone and headset boom, which is why I'm probably going on so long because I've never used this before and I'm finding it very comfortable. So in ham, we have to use our radios to know if we know how to use our radios. We want to strive for it to be a natural thing so that just as talking on your cell phone when you have an automobile emergency or somebody else does and you're along the highway, that's the use of the cell phone does not distract you whatsoever from your evaluation and your reporting and your concern for people and traffic and all the things that good responders have on their mind and are running down their checklist when they see an emergency. So if we've used our radios and they're not just like in a box or on our dash, if we're talking on them, using them, we built pieces of them, installed them ourselves with help if we don't know what we're doing. And that help comes in the form of what are called Elmers, which can also be called friends, and also it comes from books back there. That's just a low start on the books I've got on radio and antennas. I really particularly love reading about antennas, but I'm getting further into oh, things like kits. There's a QRP guy's antenna tuner, a little small QRP antenna tuner. It won't take much power, but it's I have to solder it all together. I just picked up a new new to me, old Weller soldering iron at Saturday's ham swap meet, and that will be. I had to check the wiring, and I found a disconnect, so I checked in continuity all through it and tightened up all the wire nuts, and it performs beautifully, far better than the Chinese one, which was doing okay. But we like to upgrade and we like to do things ourselves, and we do that because we learn. And so nets are for learning. Learn your procedure. Learn to make radio communications a second nature to you. Once they're a second nature to you, then you're an asset when you show up at an emergency or even sitting here in your home. We had during the storms and stuff this year, the King Mountain repeater, which is very tall and difficult to access, especially in the winter, had some kind of. What happened was they lost power, and then they couldn't restore it. So the battery backup eventually went down, and solar ain't going to save you in the winter around here. So when King Mountain went out, it started causing a cascade of issues, and so the people that run the Camp 6 repeater turned it off as far as the connection, the backbone 440 connection here up north. And during that, I happened to be sitting here. And I could hear both sides of the conversation sitting here in Cave Junction because that's kind of what I do. It's why I thought this would be a good place for me to put in a good 2 meter radio. And so I could tell Dawn at the club in Del Norte County what I was hearing the SOARC people say about the problems they were experiencing and how they were diagnosing it, and the fact that it was going to take a little bit. So, that was a small role. It wasn't an emergency in a way, but it certainly was the kind of thing that gives all of us a chance to practice emergency communications. Deciding I had a role, listening, the most important thing in radio, and then when it was appropriate, breaking into the conversation and giving pertinent, succinct information. Felt good. It felt like that's what I really like doing this for. Uh, and if that's not what stands your antenna up in this hobby, well, that's fine. Because there are so many, many dimensions to the hobby. So I've gone on long enough. The net's over. It's a beautiful evening, and I really need to check how good this system's working for my recording. So I'd like to say happy trails in 73. Thank you for listening. WS7PB standing by.